Welcome to Gary Siegel's Louisville and Nashville Eastern Kentucky Division. This is really a coal hauling railroad with some overhead traffic, manifests, and passengers. But it really is the work of Gary Siegel, the owner. He spent years and years building this by himself. What you're going to see is hand-laid track and hand-laid turnouts. All the scenery Gary pretty much did himself, with a little bit of help. There's a lot of electronics that goes into it. It's set up for centralized traffic control. But the thing you really want to know is that this is an operating layout. We gather once a month with a crew and we operate this layout just like the prototype. So we've got trains that bring product in and take product back out again. As I said, it's pretty much a coal operation. So we have lots of long coal trains and lots of little mine runs that go out to the different tipples that you'll see along the way. What we're going to do today is follow one train. It's train 160. It's on our schedule as a freight forwarder. It's going to start at the southern visible end of the layout. And we'll follow the train 160 from Ashlin, which is the southern terminal, through Dent, which is about halfway through the layout. We're not going to see the very far end, but it'll go all the way up to North Hazard. All of it's in either the extreme western part of Virginia or in Kentucky. If you look off to your left, you'll see the tracks curving around. Those are coming from Kingsport, Tennessee, which is our staging yard. And the trains come out of there and into our big classification yard in Ashlin. So that's where we're going to start. So one of the things I should tell you about Gary is that he was a professional draftsman. He always was. He did a lot of food institutional designs for food processing places, especially for retail foods, cafeterias, things like that. And he applied himself to his model railroad. So this map of the Eastern Kentucky Division was drawn up by Gary. What I find interesting is he drew the map after he built the layout. He didn't do a plan first, he just drew this after the fact. And it really shows the whole layout, where we're going to be. We're standing over here on a wall, but we're going to start here in Ashlin, and we're going to go all the way around the layout, just following the tracks. And I should point out that the stations along the line are in alphabetical order. So it starts with A, Ashlin. It goes out to Bishop's Church and then Clemens, then goes by the Dryden Y and up past Eldridge Camp, past the marshalling yard at Fowler and then Glenbrook, then all the way around to Harlan Junction and Kyle's Ford, and the Jenna branch is down here, and then into the Line Fork. And then he stops using the alphabet, and he comes into Dent. And the layout keeps on going out into the other area, and it has other names like Viper and Hazard and North Hazard. So that's basically the way the train is going to go. We are an operational layout, like I said, and so we have this big copy of the timetable on the wall. When the crews come out here and operate, they carry a timetable in their pocket. So they know where the other trains are, or if their train is a particular train on the schedule, they know what times they're supposed to be using. And we do run on a fast clock, about 3 to 1. We're here in Ashlin. This is our big classification yard. Trains come in from the south, from Kingsport, and this train actually is the Kingsport hauler. It just came in. So he's got a string of cars that are going to be sorted out here in the yard by the switchers, and they make up trains. So this train here that's right next to it is the 160 that we're going to follow today. It's ready to go. The crew's on board, and we're going to head over to Dent with that train through the whole layout so you get to see everything. So we're here in Bishop's Church. This is a little industrial area just on the north side of Ashlin. And we bring a little switcher in here and do all the industries. The cars are dropped off in Ashlin for this area. And the main line is way over on the far side. And you'll notice as we go along that the main line always has a light colored ballast, so you'll be able to identify that main line. The tower here is the North Ashlin Tower. We just call it NA cabin, but that's an important spot because it controls the crossovers from the yard over to the siding and then onto the main. So there's two sets of crossovers here. And once you get onto the main, then you are on your way north. Clemens is a town that's just several miles outside of Ashlin. It's actually named for a friend of Gary's, Dave Clemens, who Gary and Dave have been friends for a long time. So he named the town after Dave. It's in keeping with the alphabetical order. We're up to C, so ABC. This is another little industrial area that gets handled by the Valley Local out of Ashlin. It's a special train that comes out and just does this industry. There's also an interchange track over here with the Norfolk and Western. Norfolk and Western sends a train in from Norton. It comes down the track, drops off cars here, picks up cars for them, and then they go on back. Past Dryden Y, which is behind me. This is also the start of our CTC section. So you can see the green signal for our train 160. He should be coming in pretty soon. And if we're lucky, we'll get to watch it knock down. After it goes by the signal, it'll go into the tunnel behind me, and it starts its climb up the Wallen Ridge. As we work our way up Wallen Ridge, the track traverses about 60 real feet over the course of its elevation rise. So it's not like a helix. It takes it right up through the landscape as it moves higher and higher and gets over the ridge at the border between Virginia and Kentucky. So we're here at Dryden Y. The Y is special for us because it takes off from the main line and it accesses two different lines. The line off the left here goes to Corbin over on the main north-south line of the L&N. And we get trains that come in from there and come onto the layout and go across. The other leg of the Y goes to Norton, Virginia, where it interchanges with the Norfolk and Western. The Norfolk and Western actually sends a train in on this leg and comes into Clemens and does the interchange. Behind us over here is the big, tall Powell Creek Viaduct, and Gary modeled it after the Copper Creek Viaduct, which actually exists in Western Virginia. We're here at the north end of Eldridge Camp, and there is a tipple here. We send up a coal local up here to deal with this Eldridge Camp tipple, and there's also a branch behind me called the Energy Branch. So they service both of these locations. This tipple actually was built by Jim Providenza. The CTC signals that you see here are right at the end of the siding here at Eldridge Camp. We had a problem with the mainline signal because it was falling off the cliff, so we built this little cribbing section here so that it had plenty of room for the siding. Now behind me you can see a tunnel. And one of the neat things about this layout is when you go into a tunnel, if you stand still, the train will come right back somewhere where you can see it, where you stand. You don't have to try and figure out where the other end of that tunnel is. So in this case, once you go into the tunnel, it winds around and comes down this grade over here on the right. So we're here in Fowler. This is our coal marshaling yard. Basically all the coal locals that go out to the tipples bring back ROM coal or raw coal from the mines back to this area. We have 55-ton hoppers, 2 bays, and we have 70-ton hoppers that are 3 bays. They go to separate preparation plants, and the trains are made up here in this yard to go to those preparation plants where they clean the coal, they size it into different sizes. This train here that's already got power on it is heading out to our North Hazard prep plant. It's ready to go, but it's waiting because the train is due in here shortly. The way we operate the coal, the hoppers come in empty and they go out to the mines and get filled. So we have to take empty hoppers out to the mine, and then they come back in full. And the way we do that is we've got removable coal loads. So basically, we use a magnet, and the coal load just comes right straight out. And to put it back, when you load the coal at the tipples, you just drop it into the hopper and you're set. So that's how the coal loads go in and out. The way we manage the paperwork is we have car cards, and the 55-ton hoppers are in 6-car blocks. We don't do individual cars for the coal. The 70-tonners are in 4-car blocks. We have a request form, a series of request forms for each tipple. This happens to be for Fowler number 2, which is behind me, just down at the end of the Fowler yard. And so they're requesting 6 cars. So we put in 6 empties into the tipple down at Fowler 2. Once they're in between runs, somebody goes around and puts the coal in. And we take the request form, flip it over, and it tells us that it's going to go to the Coolidge prep plant. So it's as simple as that. We run a lot of coal. Train 160 has pulled into the siding here at Glenbrook. It did that because we're waiting for an empty coal train that's headed for Fowler. It'll come in here at Glenbrook, and it'll take the crossovers into the Fowler lead, and it'll set up into Fowler. Another interesting thing here while we're talking is that you can see the tipple here for Fowler number 1. And it's really hard because Gary's got this neat scenery that does view blocks all over the place, but it makes it hard to get in on the other side. So he's created this removable mountaintop. So you could just remove the whole mountain and then you can get in and easily reach the trains. So we're here in Glenbrook right now. I just wanted to point out a couple things. This is our Glenbrook tower, and it controls a little bit here. There's a branch line that comes off the main. Also helps with the running in. This is the lead for the Fowler yard. So the coal trains can come down the lead, or they can come down the main and use the crossover, as you've seen. This particular train is our 160 that we're following. He's waited for that coal train, so he's ready to go. And as soon as he gets a green signal, he'll move out. Over here on the right, you can see Fowler number 1. We're deep in coal country right now, so we send coal cars out from the Fowler yard to pick up the loaded coal cars here at Fowler 1, as well as all the other tipples. So that's a quick run from Fowler yard over to Fowler number 1. Another coal train that takes a long run is way up here towards the front on the right. That's a train that's coming down the Poor Fork branch from Lynch, Kentucky. Up in Lynch, there's a mine that was purchased by U.S. Steel solely for their use. They turned the coal into coke for their processing of steel up on the Great Lakes. They contracted with the L&N to build 100-ton hoppers. That's what those orange hoppers are that you see. And so L&N had a unit train of solid coal, came out of the Lynch mine, down the Poor Fork branch, hit the EK division, and then turned around and went northbound all the way to the Great Lakes. So this train has got a long ways to go. So we're approaching the Kentucky Northern here, and there's some really fun things. I really like this highway bridge across. But the traffic's not going anywhere right now because we had a fire up on the hill. You can see the fire over here. This was done by a young man who started operating here when he was 12. He did the fire when he was about 18, and he used some of the fire equipment and the firemen up on the fire line from the Santa Barbara County Fire Department's public information officer. He had the fire engines, so he's lent us these for the fire. But the Highway Patrol of Police have basically blocked off this roadway. That's right above the interchange yard with the Kentucky Northern. This is a live interchange for us. The Kentucky Northern really doesn't go anywhere. It ends right here at the edge. But the cars come in here from the L&N, and they get switched out by the Kentucky Northern magically. And then we have cars come in here that the L&N crews have to switch out and take back to Dent, which we'll see later. So we're now looking down at the tower at Harlan Junction. The main line of the L&N crosses the Kentucky Northern right here and then heads on into Island Springs. So one of the fun things about the Eastern Kentucky Division is it's not a short railroad. It goes on. And there's times when you get out here on the tracks, you just feel like you're in the scene. It's immersive. And this is one of those spots here at the tipple at Island Springs where you've been going along for a while out of Glenbrook, and all of a sudden here's this tipple and you're surrounded by the hills. And it's like you're there. You're in Kentucky. So we're here at the north end of Island Springs, and there's a couple of interesting things. Again, there's a tunnel. And if you go through that tunnel and you just stand still, don't move, the train will come right back at you over at Kyle's Ford. But right now, we're looking down here to the American Cyanamid. You can see a supply yard here. There's not enough spots at the plant, so we leave some of the cars out here. All the cars are brought over here on a special local train that just comes over here. So it's just, all it does is Island Springs here and the interchange track over at Harlan Junction. So the train in the siding that we're passing right now is the Jenna Branch mine run. He's just come off the Jenna Branch, which comes into the railroad here at Kyle's Ford. And he'll be taking his 70-ton loads of coal back to our marshalling yard at Fowler, and they'll head off to the prep plant up in North Hazard. So we're here at Kyle's Ford, and this is another big industry on the EK division. It's the hammer mill paper plant. And so what we do is we bring in material for the paper plant and we take away the finished craft paper which they produce here. So here in the foreground you can see some wood chip cars and some pulpwood cars. They all get sent back here to the plant to make into pulp and then made into big rolls of craft paper. Besides that, we also make other paper. The box cars are for hauling away the paper once it's finished. But we also bring in chlorine and kaolin, which makes white paper. The kaolin's coming up from Georgia. It's a clay that makes the paper nice and smooth. So like all the other areas in the layout, we operate this as prototypically as we can. So we bring in the cars that have the commodities that are needed at the plant. Beyond the paper plant on the other side of the siding, you see a couple more tipples. So we're still heavily into coal country here. These are both high-low plants. This is high-low 5 and high-low 6. High-low 5 is another Jim Providenza structure. The high-low company got its name because it was high fuel energy, so it burned really hot, had a lot of energy in it, but for some reason it didn't have a lot of smoke and stuff, so it was low emissions. And that's why they called it the high-low mines. And we've got 5 or 6 of them on the layout. So Gary had all these interesting little things that he did to the layout. And this one is particularly interesting because he cut a little notch here in this ridge so that you can see down into the line fork. So you can actually see the trains going through there. It's a special notch just for cameras. So we've arrived here in Dent with our train 160. It's sitting here on the siding now. We're waiting for the passenger train, the Southwind. He's going to be coming in pretty soon, and he'll be stopping for about 5 minutes over at the small Dent depot that you can see just on the edge of the yard. This is a yard where trains set out and pick up blocks of cars because we have a branch on the other end that takes off up the Rockhouse Creek branch and interchanges with the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. Gary has strategically placed mirrors, and you can see one of them down at the end of Dent here. It makes the railroad seem even longer. So we're just around the corner from Dent. This is North Dent. It's still part of the same yard. Same yard master runs both ends. Usually they put together some of the trains here that are going either out on the Rockhouse Creek branch, which is just behind me, or some of the locals that go out to Kyle's Ford and Glenbrook and Island Springs. We're going to see our train, the 160, come in here and meet with the crack passenger train, the Southwind, which is heading southbound towards Miami. It was a shared train between the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, the Atlantic Coast Line, and the Florida East Coast. We're set in 1971, and in 1968, the Pennsylvania Railroad was having severe financial problems, and they merged with the New York Central, which was also having problems. So because all the railroads shared equipment, you'll notice on the Southwind a green car that's lettered for Penn Central. So they're still supplying coaches for the train, and you'll see it as it goes by. So the houses that you see just on the other side of the track were all built by Gary Siegel's wife, Marilyn. So she did all the houses and put in the details, and there's some really nice details. There's a scarecrow in a little vegetable garden. There's a really nice scene of a lady hanging up her clothes on a clothesline with her child just barely walking, but with their diapers hanging down around their knees. And there's the cleanest outhouse in the world. And I say that because they put a picnic table just outside the door. Who in their right minds would put up a picnic table right outside an outhouse unless it was the cleanest in the world? As we travel across the Eastern Kentucky Division, we see a lot of signals, and those signals are controlled here in the dispatcher's office for the Eastern Kentucky Division. And the main thing here in the office is the centralized traffic control panel. From this CTC panel, we control all the turnouts and all the signals across the whole layout. The panel itself was a Southern Pacific CTC panel built by a Union Switch and Signal company. It was modified by Rod Loader, who thankfully collected a whole bunch of these things when SP was no longer using them. What Rod did was clean up the panel, and he put together this etching along the top that covers every single station across the layout. So it corresponds to the levers that control both the turnouts and the signals. So everything is controlled right here. All you have to do is set the turnout, set the signal for the direction of travel, press the coding button, and everything's done. We did a video on how the panel actually works with some good detail. It's about 15 minutes long, and you can see a link to that video down below in the description of this video. So a few more things about Gary Siegel, whose layout you've seen today. Gary started building model railroads when he was in junior high. He signed up for woodshop, and his woodshop teacher encouraged him, and he built several different layouts while he was in woodshop. He didn't finish any of them, but he had a good start figuring out how structures work, bench works, things like that. He was really into the Southern Pacific, and he was going to model the Southern Pacific with a lot of coal operation. Well, for those who know the Southern Pacific, there's not a lot of coal out in California, and what there is pretty bad coal. So it didn't make a lot of sense, and a couple of good friends of Gary's, including Doug Gurin, who was the founder of the Layout Design Special Interest Group, prevailed upon Gary to start modeling in the Appalachian coal country that you've seen. It's all bituminous coal, and there's lots of it, and so Gary tried to model as much as he could. In 1994, Gary went to the Atlanta NMRA convention, and on the way back, he rode with a couple of friends, Doug Gurin being one of them, and Mike O'Brien being the other, and they went through the country that you've seen today on the Eastern Kentucky Division. And Gary knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he applied himself to the layout, and as I said before, laid the track, all hand laid, did all the turnouts. He just did all the scenery. He did everything. And we have benefited from it, from being able to come over once a month and operate here at this beautiful layout. So I hope you've had a great tour today, and thanks for watching.